Enchantment of Eternity's top 25. Look at the Enterprise go. Top 25 episodes of Star Trek. Now, finally, into my top 10, my personal top 10 favorite episodes of Star Trek, and we're up to, of course, my number 10, which is The Council from season 3 of Star Trek Enterprise. Joined here by the usual but always special guests, Darrin with the Enterprise flying by. Thanks so much for joining.
That look. I was almost trying to do something cool, and then I noticed that one of my other headphones was like dangling right in the middle of the Enterprise there. So just totally ruined the effect. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here again.
It would have been better if this was the NX-01.
Yeah, that's true. That is the NXO fun.
There we go. And of course, also joining us, Alyssa. Alyssa, thanks so much for joining.
Hi, how's it going? Good to be here to talk about the Council. I believe this is the first Enterprise episode I've discussed with you. I don't remember, but
no, I think you were here for the other one.
Okay, well,
what was that episode called? The Vulcan one, Kirshara.
Yes. Okay,
that was like nearly a year ago.
Yeah. Wow. Well, regardless, it is good to be here to talk about this great episode of Star Trek Enterprise.
I thought you were gonna do your namesake.
Oh yeah. No, I decided not to be silly this time. Yeah, you have to translate for me because I'm gonna.
Yeah. And Jordan in the chat, hello. And once making a request. I don't know if Brandon's here because then I could annoy him. But it's been a long road getting to our top 10. Anyway. I watched The Council earlier today, and then I watched Countdown, but on the Blu-ray there's commentary for Countdown, so I watched the commentary for Countdown. I was reminded of something I already knew, but I kind of forgot about, is that originally the original theme song for Enterprise was supposed to be U2's A Beautiful Day. Like, that was the test music they were putting for it, but of course they couldn't afford that, so that's why they went for a cheap knockoff of Rod Stewart cover. But I don't know if I wouldn't have hated it as much if it was A Beautiful Day, because that's at least a decent song. Still would have been
good.
I
would not have loved that, but it would be better than a bad pop song. I still loved it, but I wouldn't hate it as much as
it wouldn't be the worst thing this franchise ever did like this is. I'm sorry, but it is.
Well, actually, the biggest franchise they made is giving it a pop beat in season 3 here as we go with it. It's got the little extra guitar bit going on as opposed to just the opening bit. I think.
Wow, you really listened to it, because I would never know that.
I was just trying to think of why is this such a bad part? I mean, one is it's the only one that has lyrics of all of the Star Trek stuff. I mean, the original Star Trek did have lyrics. Smartly, they didn't use that.
Yeah.
DS9 was the same thing. It had lyrics.
Oh, it did? I didn't.
Oh, yeah. Was it? God, I'm trying to remember what it is. Oh, yeah, it was DS9, about a wormhole, you be so far from Cardassia, on decks, Quark and Odo, all over seen by the Cisco. But they smartly kind of dropped those. They realized
is that really a thing?
I know, totally made that up. Okay. Totally made that up.
I like Adam Sandler there at the end there.
Yeah,
but there are lyrics to the original Star Trek theme.
Yeah, that I know. I did hear that.
But I think that, and also one, that was it, and two, it's not the same kind of inspiring orchestral that I think they were going for with all the other stuff. I mean, they were able to cheap with Next Generation. They were like, let's just take the the theme from the movie, that'll work just fine. We've already paid for it.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's Voyager. Whenever I listen to the Voyager theme song, I always I just sing Star Trek Voyager over and over again. Star Trek Voyager. But anyway, that's just me. Anyway.
Okay, guys, remember, I can't be here for 2
Yeah.
I gotta bail out of here when it gets about an hour.
And now for the history of this indie. No, we cut that. Sorry. Go ahead.
All right. Darren, I skipped the intro as usual. Yeah, I'm watching on Blu-ray, so I just hit the fast forward button. Anyway, let's see. So the council, yeah. So this episode was actually a stand-in for me for the 3 episodes that end season 3 because they make like a little 3-parter. And I've been not picking like more than one episode for each spot unless it's a 2-parter with the same title. But this is meant to like represent it, and really it's kind of representing the entire Zindi story arc. But I think so. Season 3 is easily my favorite season of Enterprise. It's one of my favorite seasons of the whole franchise, and watching these episodes again, because I watched all 3 of them, made me realize, because before we were coming on, I was like wondering if maybe I had the council too high, maybe top 10 was overselling it, but then watching it again, it's like, no, not overselling it. I'm like reaffirmed that I did the right thing, and I absolutely consider this one of the best episodes of the franchise. But really, it's not just this episode, although it is my favorite of the 3, which is why I chose it. I think I like Countdown almost just as much. 0 Hour was good until you get that cheap hero shot of Archer running down the game. It's just laughable. But and then that stupid ending with the Nazis or whatever. So, but other than that, like, I don't know, 0 Hour still wasn't quite to the level as the first 2, but it was still good. Like, it wasn't a bad ending. I was still included as some of the good stuff. But I just realized, like, this is like some of the best writing I think Star Trek has ever done. Like, I just think that first of all, the Zindi arc for season 3 as a whole starts kind of slow. Starts first half of the season is not so great, but it just progresses, and it's better if you've seen the whole season because you pick up more things. I think sometimes I heard from people who just watched these 3 episodes out of context and they didn't enjoy them, because I think you need to have all the background, see all the character journeys that go through. So it's not really, and I've heard that some YouTubers like only judge good Star Trek episodes that if they're standalone, if you can show it to someone who's never seen Star Trek before, which that's not how I judge what a good Star Trek episode is. I like the stuff that if you've seen it all, you appreciate it more, which is definitely the case here. But I talked before about how the first 2 seasons of Enterprise, I think, are 2 of the worst seasons of the whole franchise. And that's what makes season 3 so impressive to me, is that they took these bland and boring characters and actually made them interesting. Because I was watching these episodes, every character like has something to do and is like has more character development in these 3 episodes than they did in the entire first 2 seasons. Particularly, you get more of the stuff with Reed and him having to look after the Makos and make peace with them, which was a great story arc for the season. You got Hoshi, which mainly is the next 2 episodes rather than this one, where she has to deal with being captured by the reptilians and tortured and forced to give up the codes, and then working with Archer to try to correct it while she's still recovering. And these are characters that are usually underplayed and not very developed. Even Mayweather had a little bit of development in 0 Hour with having the fly and stuff. So I just super impressed. But not only that, is that they took, like, it was obvious this was inspired by 24, because they took that same serialized format that I mean, they wanted to do a season-long serialized story arc in Star Trek ever since Voyager. Like Brennan Braga wanted to do that with Year in Hell, but got shut down. But by this time it was 2005, so like 24 and Lost were already out, so it was already, and those are very popular, so it was already precedent. In fact, I think I see a lot of inspiration of 24 in here, particularly with at the start of the season with Archer torturing people, and and the whole like Zindi trying to destroy Earth is very similar to like the terrorist threats in 24. But I think it's original enough to not feel like a ripoff. It's its own thing, and I think it's very unique in Star Trek because of that. Yet it sticks to all of the principles. That's the one thing that I love about these episodes and the council in particular. It sticks to the principle of what Star Trek stands for. It's about the war is bad, peace is good, and that they go into this nebula and to like stop the Zindi from destroying Earth, and they're all like all armed to the teeth and ready for a fight. But it ends up turning into a negotiation. It ends up like making peace with certain factions and exposing them and helping them. And I think that is so true to Star Trek, which is why I love these episodes so much. Anyway, I talked long enough. Let me give Darrin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, no, I think this is one of those seasons that really kind of give you the promise of the premise that like Voyager didn't do, because yeah, I know the Year in Hell would have been an awesome season long arc, and that would have been to me more of like how I would want to have seen that show. But for something like Enterprise, which is out about our first foray, this makes a lot of sense that there would at a point be where we run into a big enemy that's going to take a whole long adventure in order to do. And you're right. Rating this is not good because it's not a standalone episode. I think misses too many of the points of what this season does, because you are talking about an overwhelming enemy, how you first engage that enemy, what you do to try and, succeed in your mission, and then what ends up being what you have to do afterwards, how all of those expectations change, and how you yourself have to change and realize the extent of the impact of this, which would they carry on a little bit into season 4. But no, you don't get the stakes or the intensity or how everyone's the whole bit of Degra, how he goes from the guy that's building the weapon to here where he is behind Archer and he's bringing him to the council and they're presenting the evidence that this whole war is wrong. You would miss so many of those little moments if you weren't paying attention to it. I mean, even the opening scene with T'Pol's, dealing with the whatever that metal stuff that she was taking in to experience emotions for a bit of the season, that's kind of a throwaway line, but it's a nice little wrap up of where we're going. And we start to see some tension that they're going to play with going forward between characters there. You're right. The little bit about Reed and his whole arc with the Makos is a whole different bit than you would have seen Reed at the beginning of the season and his response into things, not putting this in context of the season, I think, is a big mistake. And second, like I said, the ideas that this episode in particular deal with, I think is really important. As we'd mentioned before we started the show, I'm in the middle of a Battlestar Galactica rewatch with my wife, and we're just about to wrap that up. And we're at the stage where you have to deal with the exact same things here. What do you do when you have to make peace with your enemies? How do you reconcile? How do you forgive the damage each side has done to the other in order to move forward? What are the conflicts, the hate that we carry with us, and the expectations versus we've got to do the right thing, and move forward, move past, make peace. Every war in history is solved ultimately diplomatically. You can beat them into submission, but ultimately you have to have a diplomatic relationship with this other country or being or race or whatever in order to make peace. And this is a reality of what we have to deal with. And I think so often we like to push this away. We beat our enemy and it's gone. And here it's the actual no. How do we realize that we've both made mistakes? We've both done serious injuries. but we're better together forward. In fact, that's really where our future lies. And how do we get past the anger that we hold? And so, yeah, there's a lot in this episode. I always love to see why you choose certain things in your top 10 or your top, why everything is placed. And watching this, I was like, oh, because of the meaty subject matter that this deals with. We're not doing space adventure here. We're doing diplomacy. And I think that this is a great medium and a great way to end this particular arc, or begin the end of this particular arc. Alyssa?
I think that, so I think that this is some of the best Star Trek, and the best thing before this, in my opinion, was a few years earlier would be the second half of season 7 of Deep Space Nine, where they just did an entire half of a season and an incredible serialized story arc. I totally disagree with this notion that the best Star Trek episodes are the ones that you can show to people without ever having seen Star Trek and they can appreciate it. I would say those are the best ones to introduce people to Star Trek as an entry point. But the best episodes of Star Trek for me are the ones that you have had to have watched it for the whole season to get the full context, to really get it. And that even includes Strange New Worlds, which gets this reputation. Oh, it's episodic. It is, but also, like, you wouldn't get Quality of Mercy if you never watched any of the previous episodes before that. Like, you wouldn't get it quite on the same level, because that was a payoff for an entire season-long arc. So to me, that is the best Star Trek, is when you need to watch several episodes to get the full picture. I mean, serialization of serialized television was the future. 24 was one of the early ones that really got into it. I believe this same year that this season came out, there was another little show that just started called Lost. I think it was right around the same time. Ending aside, it definitely revolutionized serialized television. To me, this is like great Star Trek right here, because you needed to understand Degra and the characters and how all the pieces fit in. By the time you get to these 3 episodes, it wouldn't work if you just sat down and watched these 3. Obviously, you need the whole context of the season, and to me, like, that makes it great. Like, that's to go through the whole season and then have this kind of payoff. That's what makes these 3 episodes great, because they're a payoff for all of the attention you've paid to this season. And this season does kind of deviate a little bit from it kind of goes off a little bit from the Xindi story arc, or has storylines that are kind of tangentially related, and that there are some bad episodes in season 3. Not immune from having bad episodes, but those bad episodes generally are ones that have very little to do with the Xindi. I think the only one that does directly relate to the Xindi that I would say sucked would be the one where Archer was like, was he obsessed with the eggs or something like that?
Yes, yeah, the insectoid eggs. Yeah, got it.
Oh, yeah.
So.
That was, but generally speaking, like, most episodes that directly related to the story arc were fantastic, and this is the payoff, starting these 3 episodes. And I do think that the Council is the best of the 3. I agree with you on that. I also think 0 Hour, it's the cheesy running I could deal with, but I think the fact that it doesn't actually have an ending, that, like, instead of just wrapping up the story's ended now, it felt very unsatisfying that here's this whole other thing we're going to get into, like that, like, kind of really bothers me about 0 Hour, which really holds it back for me. But up until that point, everything that was related to the Xindi, this is just a fantastic ending to this episode, to this season, and it's a good payoff for all the patience you had and investing into these new characters and new situations. It's just incredible. So I guess I'm speaking of the entire story arc in general, but also this particular episode, the Council, to me. We'll get into where I have it in my top 100 at the end, but it is my high, as I told Jordan Johnson earlier, it is my highest ranked Enterprise episode. It was number 1 on my Enterprise top 10. because you summed it up well. That it really, it's just Star Trek. It's just, it's to me is a perfect Star Trek episode. So
now, I digress a little bit, mentioning because you mentioned 0 Hour and that ending. Because I just found out something. I think it was a month ago. I watched this documentary on Amazon. They had each episode covered a different Star Trek show, and they had one for Enterprise. And I finally learned something new that I didn't know before that I thought was really shocking for me, is that that ending where they woke up in the alternate Nazi whatever. Brennan Braga and Rick Berman's original plan was to do the entire season 4 set in that time with the Nazis as the villains, but luckily, the CBS head didn't fire, but removed Rick Berman and Brendan Braga's showrunner and gave showrunning duties to Manny Koto. And Brendan Braga is like, told him that was our plan, but you're the showrunner now. You do what you want. And he was like, well, that's stupid. I'm not gonna do that. Like, he even said that in an interview. I'm like, thank God. Can you imagine how terrible that would have been if they did an entire season 4 with them in the alternate Nazi?
Bad enough they did one episode.
Yeah, I know.
Gosh. How do we wrap up this big evil entity alien race? Nazis.
Yeah, and it was just and it was such a anticlimactic wrap up to the contemporary Cold Wars. But anyways, we digress. But yeah,
I mean, at that point, I think Manny Koto was just like, let's get rid of the temporal Cold War so we can do other things.
Right.
But they did say it was their plan originally to go back to the temporal Cold War and reveal who Future Guy was in season 5. But
yeah, it was going to be Archer apparently.
That was Brennan Braga's idea. I don't know if that's what Manny Koto had in mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would he do this?
Yeah.
Well, that makes no sense that it would be Archer.
No, none whatsoever.
But Mirror Universe Archer. Oh no, he sucked too. Never mind. He was. I think he got taken out, right?
Brandon says it's not like TOS didn't do Nazis. They're obsessed with Star Trek, obsessed with doing Nazis. TOS did it, Voyager did it, and it's just enough. But
I never got Star Trek's obsession with doing Nazi storyline.
Yeah.
Well, at least they didn't go back to the world of the Yangs and the Kongs. Right?
God damn. But anyway, the other thing about the whole Xindi arc in this episode in particular is that it was obviously originally intended to be a 9/11 analogy, at least at the start. That's Earth getting attacked, and of course this was made shortly after 9/11, and so I've heard the opinion that towards the end of the season it kind of lost that and wasn't really analogous to 9/11 aftermath, but I disagree, because I think it's not a one-to-one for sure, but it's similar in the fact that if you think you're going over there, like at least the war in Afghanistan and whatnot, you think you're going over there just to kick ass, is not how you resolve things, and that they presented that there was a complex geopolitical situation with a lot of different factions. You have to ally yourself with some factions or whatnot, and it's more complicated, and diplomacy, which is not what the U.S. actually fucking did, but diplomacy is the better way to handle things, which is the commentary I think this show was making. So I actually think that's also what impressed me about this episode in particular, Council, because it deals with, we've been seeing this council all season long. And again, that's why it makes it so great if you watch everything in order, because we constantly see it. We finally get to see Archer make it there and have these allies, and the ally with Dager, and the ally with the other primates and the Boreals, and then having to convince and have the aquatics kind of remind me of Ents, how they take a long time to come to any decisions. So that dynamic complex, I think, was great social commentary. Alyssa, I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, or just the episode as a whole too.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. I was also just thinking about just the idea of the Zindi to me is really interesting, that there would be a planet that would have different species, because just about every planet that we see is monospecies, just because currently we are. But there could be planets where different species develop, and yeah, the names of them are definitely on the nose. Like, I don't we're the aquatics and we're the insectoids.
So I was just watching the commentary, and one of them threw out the excuse, "Oh, maybe that was just a universal translator translating it to that."
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can roll with that. But I'm willing to forgive it regardless. I think that they need to be called that for the audience's sake. Anyways, I just like this concept of a planet where there's different species that all have to work together, because you don't see that a whole lot in Star Trek. So I thought it was an interesting concept in general.
And the one thing I noticed when watching this episode is there's a lot of world building. There's a lot of lore, particularly in this episode, introduced about Zindi background and history. And it's great that they did so much development. I mean, there's been Star Trek aliens that had been, the Romulans had been around for like all of TOS and TNG, and they barely had any lore background developed until Picard. Like, it's amazing how much world building they did.
Yeah, they what were they called? The bird people that were extinct?
Avians, I believe.
Yeah, that was kind of like a lesson of what could happen. And yeah, that's just you're right. It was just really a rich history. And yeah, they went deeper with the Zindi than they did with the Romulans at this point.
Well, but I think, this whole episode in a way sort of hinges on identifying the enemy as a reflection of self. And especially when we're dealing with Star Trek, which is all about the Federation and these different races kind of coming together. In some ways, this is a small version of kind of what that is you have these different races that are able to kind of work together to build up. The fact that they're from a singular planet, you're right. That's odd. Usually you just have one minor, or I think isn't Discovery's and Saru's planet have two species on it that sort of braid all there. So but otherwise a very rare type of thing.
This predates that, so yeah.
Oh yeah. No. I mean, indeed, but the fact that we've got to identify with them. In order to identify with them, we've got to be able to see some sort of history to them, a reasoning for it, something that is like us. Oh, your world was destroyed and you were guided around, and then you found a way together, and this council is the only way that you're able to put all these together. It's like, this is the Federation in a different format of Archer being able to see you can't have these different races together. And the fact, even later on, and he mentions Degra, hey, 400 years in the future, when I was on that future Enterprise, there were Zindi there also. We're kind of mapping that out. So I think it's important you have to give a history, because you have to identify with them. If we get to a Romulan-centric one, they might open up a few more things of their history. We've done that with the Vulcans as well. When you got to go to Vulcan, they'll do it. Here they have to give us a history in order to get us to the point of where they want us when things switch, when sides change, when alliances come up, when we start to look towards tomorrow, when you get the handshake between Degra and Archer in the engine room, and they're like, that future you talked about, maybe it starts right here. You wouldn't get that unless they did spend the time to do these. And you're right, and I do like the fact that they've got the Avians, which is just, they mentioned, this is where we're meeting. This is the central. This is the council, but it's built on the bones of the species that didn't make it. Which I think is kind of, again, it gives a loss to them, which is, I think, something that we as the audience can then identify with is, we have also had losses that we've got to move forward from.
Well, I have another random thought related. I think another like kind of parallel to 9/11 is that I feel that Tucker represents like a lot of Americans who were just like all of a sudden we're anti-Muslim, like all Muslims suck, and we're going to kill them, and all this and that. And I think he was proven to be wrong by the
Yeah.
end season. So I love that. I think that went over everyone's heads, but I do think if you want to look at it as an analogy, like I think he represented the bigotry that came out of 9/11. And Tucker definitely, like, he just hated Degra, even though Degra was clearly a good guy and trying to right his wrongs, and didn't realize, what he had did wrong, and was trying to like support his family, and he was generally a good guy, and Tucker still blindly hated him. And I think that at the end you see that Tucker was wrong. So I love that too. Like I love that message as well in this Cindy story arc.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, because
Um,
I think Tucker. Sorry to jump right in. I think
No,
Tucker
go ahead.
was the audience. It was the one whose mind had to be changed. Everyone else had a bit of flexibility, but Tucker had the skin in the game. He lost his sister, so he has a personal reason to have that hate. So yeah, I think you're right. I loved how they did that, and I think that was the one that you had to focus on. That was the mind that you had to change, because that was the one at the most extreme, the most reason to hate. And if they can change, then we all can change. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. So the other thing I wanted to mention, since you brought up Discovery, is that I always talked, and Alyssa earlier brought up DS9 serialized. I always thought that, well, Enterprise in particular, season 3 in particular, did serialization better than most modern Trek shows. I think most modern Trek, maybe, Discovery season 5, they finally got it right. But most modern Trek shows, people were like, oh, Star Trek shouldn't do serialization. But I disagree. I think Star Trek always at its best when it does serialization. It just needs to do it correctly, which I think this season they did. Although I will say it probably would have been better if it was a shorter season with like 12 or 13 episodes, so you wouldn't have crap like the Western Planet or the Archer playing with the baby reptilian or insectoids and shit like that. But that's the form.
Beauty and the Beast episode.
The what one?
Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, the Beauty and the Beast, or the one where they turn into creatures like, let's go to Equat. That one too.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree that like 15 is the magic number for season lengths, right? Yeah.
So but I still think they did it better. Like they did it like correctly first. It would have been better with, but they had the 25 episode format to play with, and I think they did the best they could with that. So another sort of analogy that I was thinking of when the episode The Council is concerned is the Council itself kind of reminded me a lot of American politics, and I think it almost resonates more in present day than it did, because you have these different opinions, someone presenting facts and the truth, and one side is steadfast against those facts. I'm sorry, I'm getting political, but I have to. One side is steadfast against those facts and truths and refusing to accept them. And I noticed that particularly when I was watching this episode with the reptilians being like, war lies, when they actually had like proof and evidence and all that, but enough people, but the kind of counter in discourse between them did remind me a lot of American politics.
What, like somebody isn't going to listen to facts or anything reasonably presented in front of them? Yeah, I guess you could see it maybe in a place or two. Yeah, no, it is. How do you deal with an intractable position in something like this is necessary? We have to make a decision together or nothing can get done. And of course, then hijacking that system for your own. Look, man, get politics out of Star Trek. Politics is always been Star Trek. All the way.
Star Trek that we just started here in 2024. Like this Star Trek.
No, whenever anyone says get politics out of Star Trek or call Star Trek woke, I just find it hilarious. I'm not even like mad at it. I just find it so funny.
Yeah.
Look, this is the adventures of the Space Navy.
There was a meme going around for a little while with the guys from the black and white dudes from Battlefield, and
yeah.
I think I can't remember exactly what, but they had these bubbles, like they were talking, like, "Well, Star Trek is so woke, and it's never been woke. It was never woke in the '60s or so."
Yeah, no, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
I remember when Fox complained that Star Trek was woke, there was a meme going around saying Fox News complaining about Star Trek taking place in space. But anyway,
Because it's so elitist. You got to be up in space, man. Nothing for those blue collar people here. This it's not like some lower deck show.
So, Jordan Johnson's saying better than Picard. The hell you say? Are you being sarcastic?
I assume he was.
I'm gonna assume
Johnson's opinion on Picard. So I don't know.
And Brandon in the chat had mentioned it was Trillium D that T'Pau was taking in order to get the emotional kick for her excitement, for her exploration of human emotions.
But yeah, so I don't know if you guys had any more commentary on the council itself, the Archer meeting there, having to convince them. I just love those scenes. It's probably part of the reason why I picked this as my favorite of the 3 episodes, is that we've been seeing this council all season. We finally get it, and he has to like present this argument and the banter back and forth that did remind me of current day politics. And I think there was some commentary there, but yeah, I think these scenes were perfect.
No, my only actual criticism is just the standard kind of television like joke line after the insectoid throws Archer on the table and Hoshi tries to translate, does the "you don't want to know." You just didn't want to come up with an interesting line. Was that it? Do you think that he would, Captain would? Anyway, that's one of those little tropes where I'm like, yes, he does, or don't say anything. Come on.
I was coming up with headcanons. Like, what could he possibly say that would be her response?
I love that because the imagination. Like, what could he be saying?
I'm thinking, see, what I came up with, he was saying that I'm going to kill you and your whole family and you're all, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was just kind of even like well, what'd you think it'd say? Or something like that.
Yeah, more graphic. Like, I'm gonna eat your head and poop it out. Something like really graphic or something.
Oh, is that how those hatcheries work? Oh my god.
All right, we'll address Jordan Johnson's question for the panel. Do you think that time travel worked better here than it did in Discovery? Which show did it better, do you think? It depends, because it depends. Sometimes Discovery did it better and sometimes Enterprise did it better. Like, if you're talking about the time travel in the Zendiarch itself, which wasn't much, I would say this did it better, unless you're comparing it to Discovery episode 4 of this past season, where that was kind of just, as I don't know, it's hard.
That was kind of clever.
Yeah,
that was kind of a clevery thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, mostly that was just projection. Well, I mean, I guess there was the whole bit with Daniels and things.
Oh yeah. When I was watching 0 Hour and Daniels showed up, I was thinking to myself, "Oh, that's Kovac." I was trying to picture Kovac.
Does Darren know that? Have you watched the end of Discovery?
I have Twitter, so everything gets spoiled for me generally very quickly. But yeah, no, I still have I still have about half a season of Discovery to go through. So
yeah, no, I'm sorry, I did not like that because he's nothing like Daniels. Anyway.
To me, that's one of those cheap things. Like, why would you have to do that? Why? That's almost like we just want to get a call back. We just want to link things together, and I don't know. I don't always.
That's what it's like to me. Like, it's just like, oh, we just want to go. Look, this, hey, he was from the other show.
This is the was it the pitch meeting for hey, that guy was from the other show.
Yeah, exactly. Sent to the principal's office. I like that. I thought that was a cute little moment between them, Hoshi and Archer. You got Hoshi actually used in this trilogy, which is what I love. But anyway, so let's talk about Dagra. I think this is another reason why this is my favorite of the trilogy, because Dagra, this is the only episode in that trilogy he appears in because he died.
He's not dead, yeah.
But it was shot like this doesn't seem. This is why I feel like they were taking inspirations from 24 or Lost or other serialized shit. I know Game of Thrones wasn't around yet, but still, because this isn't like Star Trek to have an ongoing important character like that to get killed before even before we get to the final couple episodes. And I thought that was shocking. I thought when Dolan just comes up. Now, the one thing I will say about it, when the reptilians changed their mind, and then Dolan, what's his face, Dagra, and the other dude went to Archer and Trip, and was like, oh, the council's decided they're gonna vote in your favor. Oh, it was so great. And I'm like, come on, guys. You gotta see that the reptilians are just fucking and scheming with you. I mean, I think they were a bit naive for doing that, but it was still like shocking when Dome just went up and flat out killed Dagra. I just think it's part of what makes this original and stand out amongst a lot of other Star Trek stuff.
I think it really is, for me, the thing that puts this episode over the top. That's why I say it's my highest ranked Enterprise episode, is that is really shocking, and it's really powerful, and it just makes you realize I really care about this character. I never knew about this character before this season started, and when we first met him, we were viewing him as the enemy. Like, this is the bad guy. This is the guy who made the weapon that killed a bunch of people on Earth. So for them to develop this character in a way that by the time he gets killed off, like, I feel emotionally affected by it. Like, I'm sad for this. He always talks about his family. Like, I think it's a tragedy. This character gets killed, and I feel emotionally affected. And I think that's incredible storytelling that they bring you to this point. In that episode. So I actually think that death is what I think really, it's the reason why I rank this as my top Enterprise episode. I think what puts it over the top of everything else, because that was shocking but emotionally impactful.
Well, yeah, I think Trip put it perfectly when he was like 24 hours ago. I would have been dancing joy, and now I actually feel bad that he's gone, because that death really is the turning point. Not only do you have the success, he put himself on the line in order to save our planet, and then he dies doing so. I mean, one, there's a nobility to the death in that sense. Two, you almost have to kill Dagra from a storytelling standpoint, because he has done so much for wrong, as it's almost a necessary sacrifice for him to die in order for the peace process to go. I mean, that's just like storytelling bit. But yeah, I think the fact that we do get all of these moments, and that we have, even from our introduction to Dagra from the Enterprise, when he gets kidnapped, and his whole bit is he's talking about his family and his everything like that. And that's kind of the first thing that Archer starts even recognizing in with him, is this is a family man who cares about his stuff and is just doing the thing that he has to do to protect him. And the fact that his death is so there's no remorse for that. The reptilians afterwards is just like, yeah, I killed him. He just betrayed people. Screw that guy. There isn't even any like ham-hold or anything like that, which is good. And the fact that they do it in a nice way. We get our success. Everybody is feeling good. We've got that next step again. We get that handshake between him and Archer, and the next thing is that quiet little bit where they're just talking like, you're in a room alone with this guy? Well, that's kind of dangerous, but I mean, I guess you're both council members. You can't go. No, he's killed you. It's arch-wise, from an arc standpoint, they set that up perfectly. They really play with the emotional bits, and that's something I think this episode does well. It takes you on that emotional journey of successes and failures and worries and relief really well. And I think that's what holds you like throughout the episode. Even like when you think it's going to end and then they get the weapon and they got escaped, you're like, oh God, there's still 5 minutes left in this episode. What are they going to do?
Yeah. So you both brought up Trip before, and so one of the things I love is the scene we get with Dager and Trip, where Dager, when Trip is still being a dick to him, and Dager is like, "Look, I understand. I can't change what I did, but I'm risking my life. I'm risking the lives of my family." And then you have, after he's killed, Trip like saying like, who would have thought that I would actually feel bad that he died? Like, that is great storytelling, great character development.
Well, because that's the emotional arc you want the audience to go on. You take of those moments, all of those successes. And again, since Trip is that character that you have to convince, that really has to take the biggest journey to go from, I just want to kill you guys and make you suffer, to, wow, the guy behind all that, I don't know if we'd call each other friends, but we weren't really enemies at the end.
Yeah.
And again, this is to me when Star Trek is doing it great, when it takes us in that journey, when it shows us what we need to look for tomorrow. Our battle of today is one thing, but then what is tomorrow's plan? What do we do afterwards? And I think that's the great thing that Star Trek tries to present to us. What do we want our tomorrows to look like?
So, a question I have for you both is, I think Brandon in the chat earlier was talking about Dullum being a bit two-dimensional villain, maybe a bit mustache twirly. What do you think about that? Do you think he was? Because I think that maybe a little bit, but it serves the story so well, I'm okay with it. But anyway, what were your thoughts on that?
I disagree with this idea that every single villain in the universe has to be multidimensional, and we can never, ever, 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 ever have just an evil villain. Like, I disagree with that. I think sometimes it's appropriate to just have an evil mustache twirly villain, and this is one of those cases because you have a really interesting and complex story around him, surrounded by interesting and complex characters and intertwined storylines. I don't mind that you have just a villain who's, because there are people like that. Their mustache twirly villains exist. I'm not going to say anyone's name because we're trying not to be political here, but there are. I mean, sometimes I'm just like, I look at these dudes on TV and I'm like, why are you guys voting for these people or supporting these people? They're basically mustache twirly villains. There are people that exist like that. So I just disagree with this. Like, we never, ever, ever can have mustache twirly villains. But when your whole story is like hinging on who the villain is and you don't have a lot else going on, like Discovery Season 3, then the mustache twirly villain does really hurt the story because you're really hinging a lot on this villain. Whereas here you're not. There's so much. This villain is just one small minor cog in the machine. So to me, like, I think there is a place for mustache twirly villains, and this, for me, this is one of those places. Personally, that's my opinion.
And he also represents the polar opposite of Trip. On the same side, he is also the most extreme, the most responsive, the most committed to whatever the path going forward, the destruction of our enemies. Only he's not even willing to listen. He's not willing to weigh out of anything, and he is committed. And if you want to set him as almost a religious, a fundamentalist or something, his commitment to the Guardians, they're like our gods. They have guided us to everything. So we listen to everything that they say. I mean, even goes against his second in command when he's like, if you ever even question a Guardian again, I'll make your skin be the front of my ship or whatever, decorate the front of my ship. He's just, almost, again, like a religious fundamentalist in the sense if he is just committed to what his leaders, his spiritual advisors are telling him are the truth and will listen to nothing else. So, I mean, is he mustached really? Maybe, but he just represents that extreme. And you've got enough people in the middle. Degra's the one in the middle there. Dolan, the other ones are the ones in the middle. You know, I wouldn't say the insectoids because they don't really do anything outside. Like, they're the bad guy because they're insects.
Yeah.
Not a lot of character depth we're getting out of the insects. Hoshi won't even tell us what their threats sound like. How are we supposed to know anything about them?
Well, at least the insectoids in the next episode actually changed their minds and went against them, but they stupidly just allowed Dome to just kill him. But at least I think they had some development, and I think that Dolem, like, even though he does come off as evil, it's a kind of evil I can buy because he's power hungry. And there's a lot of like real life people like that who will do evil shit because they're power hungry. And what I think the key here is when the Guardians promise to make the reptilians like the head of the Zindi Empire. Like, well, yes, that's all he cares about is power.
Yeah.
So, you ever seen that in real life?
Yeah.
You know, I wish television just had a lower opinion of people's morality there, or better reflect humanity. No.
But so now I know Jordan Johnson is being sarcastic.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, the Dome is not as good as Adam Soong, the best antagonist ever. Indeed. Oh, guys, talk about mustache twirly villains. But anyway,
new rule for Star Trek moving forward: no more Borg, no more things.
No, yeah, please, yes, I completely agree. I love Brent Spiner, but dude, man, just enough.
1000%. But so speaking of the Guardians, though, I wanted to talk about them next because I think they add an interesting dynamic to it. And the whole episode starts with like this weird, they're in their void, like flashing by. I like that sort of weird cinematography they use with them. They kind of remind me of the female changeling from DS9. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else got that vibe.
Yeah, no, they always did. I mean, in fact, for a while, it's not the same actress, but it's not.
Yeah.
But they actually also remind me of like the evil progenitors. Like they remind me of the progenitors too. From the
yeah. Well, that was same
actress. So I like thought it was like that actress again, but it's totally not.
Yeah,
definitely changeling vibes.
And again, they could say that they're kind of mustache twirly, but I don't think they are because they have their own motivations of wanting to readjust. And I love how that adds such a dynamic to the whole situation that the Zindi are just being manipulated and lied to by this, force that's just doing it for their own interests. Also, nothing we ever see in real life. and so that's. And the fact that she was trying to manipulate Degra, and he's like, I can see it now. I can't believe I fell for this shit, and that just what made the whole dynamic just so much more interesting.
Well, I think they do a lot of great fun bit with carrot and stick. And here you really see it because you know what their ultimate ends in. I mean, they're starting it out like, we're screwed, man. We got to try and do something quick. Just go down there, do whatever you can, tell them whatever you need to. It's like, oh, but I want to be best friends. Oh, you don't like us? Then I'm going to have to destroy you. Do you want to be destroyed? It's like they just go back and forth. And, it's perfect because it's very well done. It's very tempting. But certainly, as we, the audience, know, everything they're saying is a lie. Everything that's coming out of their mouth is just whatever they think you need to hear to give them what they want. Whether it's messing with Degra at the beginning or with Dolem at the end going, well, we can see a future where the reptilians are really the ones in charge. So, it's we're probably going to wipe you all out anyway at the end because, we don't want to take any chances. But it's not so. Yeah, they're kind of fun in that way. I mean, it is in fact the most mustache twirly without really twirling the mustache. It's just, what do you want to hear? Do I gotta entice you? Do I gotta threaten you? Carrot or stick? We could use whatever, man. We got all sorts of stuff here. Whatever lie's gonna say, because I don't care about you.
Yeah, Alyssa, any thoughts on the Guardians?
The Guardians of Forever. I mean, no, really, not like other than what I said, very much female changing vibe. But yeah, I mean, I thought that they were I actually thought they were very interesting villains. I mean, they are also like, mustache twirly, but I thought the whole concept of them was really interesting. And to eventually tie them into the spears, like the spears were presented as some kind of big mystery, and to tie it all together, So yeah, I thought they worked very well.
I was looking at some of the Blu-ray features, and the one for season 3 that talked about the Temporal Cold War, and they talked about the Guardians, but they're not really part of the Temporal Cold War. I didn't see that. I didn't see the Zindi arc as part of the Temporal Cold War. I saw the Suliban and the shit with Future Guy was part of the Temporal Cold War. Although Future Guy is the one who told Enterprise about the Zindi to begin with, but still, I still feel like this is like a separate sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't think it was related to the Temporal Cold War. I think the Guardians had their own agenda that had nothing to do with the Temporal Cold War.
Oh, Darrin,
yeah. The only real bit is the fact that they're like from the future, but a parallel universe. So I mean, in that sense, they kind of, because what is at the end of season 2, they're bringing out bits and they're like, this is from 400 years in the future. And we can see that we're dealing. So it's just tangentially, and I think that's why we get at the beginning of the season the warning from Shadow Guy, like, "Hey, shit's going down. That's messing up our stuff. So we need you to fix it."
Yeah.
It sort of kicks it off, but yeah, it's like just one of those almost tangential things. But otherwise, no, not really.
Also, Daniels is involved, but but he already knows Enterprise, so. He time travel shit he would get involved with.
Oh yeah, with that snappy outfit, outfit. You even have pockets? I don't know. I think it's bad choice. Need pockets.
You mean Kovic?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. It's just not the same guy.
Yeah, no. See, that's it. I don't know.
Never. Yeah, look. It's the same guy. I just will never be convinced.
I'm actually okay with it, but it's definitely a retcon for sure. But yeah. Anyway, so I wanted to also talk about the side plot we got with T'Pol and Reed and Mayweather going off and doomed Redshirt and Mako going off to the sphere. So the main thing I have to say about the storyline, because the storyline was mostly, we're investigating this sphere thing, but then the giant claw comes and gets us. But the thing I loved about the storyline so much that I think contributed to why I love this episode is at the end, after, doomed Mako dies, is that they don't treat it like a typical red shirt death. The fact that the conversation that Reed and T'Pol have, I think, is absolutely riveting, absolutely powerful, and speaks to one of the main issues I have with the red shirt trope is the fact that, crew members die and they just act like nothing happened. They're like, oh, no, whatever. But here, like, they kind of address that full on, where Reed, like, gets pissed off. He's like, we're getting used to this. Like, we shouldn't be getting used to people dying. It should always be a big deal. And it's like, so many people had this mission and we've gotten accustomed to it, and we shouldn't. That's terrible. And then T'Pol brings up the whole, good Star Trek 2 shout out. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And Reed, his response to that is, that doesn't make his death right. But she was like, no, it makes it honorable. I thought that was such a good moment, such a powerful moment. That's mainly what I liked about that storyline.
Totally. I think that is a great little bit. It definitely shows a nice arc for Reed, who was very much against the Makos originally when they came on board and had all of that kind of conflict. And now at the end, he's like, "Yeah, we're losing another Mako, man. I just don't like it." I mean, look, I've got issues with Reed. He's probably one of my lesser favorite characters, and I couldn't tell you why. I've got really nothing against him. I just never really.
It's because he talks about the Paul's bum.
Yes, we don't need to talk. We just stare. No, I'm kidding. But it's, I mean, so I think that is a kind of a good little bit, and it's nice that you get the Star Trek 2 little reference there, and you get the fact that at least we deal with the situation. But yeah. Oh, also want to say hi to Rob in the chat there, popping in the midst of his editing. Hi, Rob. My only downside with this whole kind of sequence is it does have one of my other kind of least favorite moments of the episode. Again, just because it's a trope that's overused, is when they're heading into the sphere and T'Pol is like navigating him in through the exhaust port, but doesn't bother mentioning to anybody else that that's where they're going. So it's like, we're flying towards a wall. Just keep going. It's fine. You could just say it's a hidden exhaust port. Boom, I know
or
that
it's
really,
a hologram.
or whatever it is. I like the end, but it's like, I gotta agree with Reed there. It's like, you could have said something. That's just mean to people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was to create tension for the audience.
Yeah.
It doesn't really make a lot of sense in universe for her to do that.
No, not at all.
But yes, that we got an acknowledgement of losing Private Redshirt there. I think was at least a nice moment.
But so Alyssa, any thoughts on this whole subplot?
No, I just I agree with what you said. I mean, I will admit that I was really always kind of iffy on the Makos because I felt like it was kind of glorifying like the Marine mindset. And Mark, I think you knew my friend from high school who became a Marine and what an asshole he turned into.
Yes.
The whole mindset of the Marines, and like, so that whole kind of like, machismo times a million kind of thing like never sat well with me. But I think these episodes here towards the end made me feel a little better about the Makos, and like that, this was a real human that died. And then what's his face, whatever, I forget the dude's name who was the leader, who
Major Hayes.
Really genuinely cares about him as a human being. And like, I don't know, so I think by the end of it, I empathize with them a lot more. But for a while, for a lot of the season, I was like, they're glorifying this military mindset that I'm not a huge fan of. But I think this tying it into the story arc, I think this all kind of helps make me feel better because it really humanized them a lot.
Yeah, in the middle of the season when Reed and Hayes were like attacking each other, I thought that was so proper bullshit. I thought that was kind of nonsense. But I do love the payoff, which is in the next episode, Countdown, where Hayes is killed and Reed has the sort of last words and then goes to his team and it's like, he died. Now my one volunteers and they all volunteer. Like, I thought that like almost brings a tear to my eye. I thought that was a great moment. And then,
I think it's important always to make a character a dick, so later on when you make them halfway decent, you feel a lot better about it.
Well, Reed actually was the dick.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Dick to Hayes.
I don't like Reed. No, it's so mean because I follow the actor on Twitter. He's a very nice guy. I mean, no judgment against any of the actors. I don't like the character.
All right, so the episode ends with basically, Dager dying, the reptilians teaming up with the insectoids, stealing the weapon, which is a great ending sequence. And you have like Archer willing to fly the Enterprise right into the anomalies and they're like, oh, what about the anomalies? And he's like, I don't give a shit, go in. But they miss the weapon and flies off. I think that was a very, very suspenseful. It's part of what makes these serialized arcs so good, particularly when we're towards the end. It is such a great cliffhanger, such a great way to end it and going into the next couple episodes. I just think it was a great ending. I don't know if either of you had anything else to add to that.
No, I mean, I have to agree, and I think that's kind of the nice thing is at this point, and even the next couple episodes, you basically get an act 3 to a season, so you don't have to do a lot of build up or setup or anything. You can just go, and I think that is a great payoff again with the serialized. Is by the end, it's kind of like when you get to Infinity War and Endgame and stuff at the end of the MCU. It's like, look, you're either at this point on board or not. We're just gonna go and tell this big giant ending story, which you'll appreciate if you've watched the whole thing. And it's not really made for a one-off viewing. Nobody jumps into Countdown for a single episode watch.
Or they shouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say, I don't know if I told the story before, but I was living in New Zealand at the time these episodes came out, and they didn't have like Enterprise, and this is the day before like streaming services were really around. And so I had my mom tape them off the TV and mail them to me, but she missed a couple of episodes, and so I missed a couple of like key plot points. And also it ended with Countdown, so I thought that was the end of the season. I was like, damn it, they're gonna wait till next season to resolve it. But then I went online and looked up, no, there's actually another episode. She just didn't send it to me, so I went to my friends the pirates in order to watch the final episode instead of waiting. But so I've watched it in a weird order, so I was missing a few things, so it was great to go back and finally watch it in the proper order and see everything. But I think this season is much more powerful when you've seen everything. And one thing I forgot to mention in that ending part was Hoshi getting abducted, which again raised the stakes and set up for the next couple episodes, and made it important that she was the linchpin for them trying to figure out how to get the codes.
Yeah, the next episode, I think is the best Hoshi that we ever see, because Hoshi was for so long such an underdeveloped nothing character, and they always gave her really badly written scripts for all episodes, including in this season.
Yeah, the Beauty and the Beast.
The Beauty and the Beast episode. So I think that the story arc that they give her after this is really incredible. And this kind of sets up for that. At the end, it leaves you in suspense and wanting for more, which is exactly what it needed to do. So.
Yeah, I believe when I did my video on picking my favorite centric episode for each character for Enterprise, I picked Countdown for Hoshi. I think I picked 0 Hour for Reed, because even though it's not really a Reed episode, it's like
it's not really a Hoshi episode, but she is in it.
It's certainly better than the stupid Beauty and the Beast one, or that transporter one.
They had to give her this as payback for doing those episodes. It's like, okay, sorry about that. That's we're gonna give you something meaty. We're gonna give you a real reason why the Hoshi is on the Enterprise.
Hey, I mean, I'm sorry, I hate to go there, but Star Trek, for the most part, was really bad at writing for female characters. I mean, they did all right with Janeway, but B'Elanna Torres is another one I think of who they just wrote so many terrible episodes for her, and she did not live up to her potential. Counselor Troy is another one, and Hoshi is another example where they just don't know how to write for female characters.
No, it's totally true. I've been going through TNG recently and realizing how much they underutilize or miswrite for Counselor Troy, and also crush her and fucking give her a Space Ghost for her episode.
What? Space Ghost was not a great storyline for her? What are you saying?
Look, they let Geordi make a holographic copy of another living person that he falls for, and when she complains, the episode tries to say that Geordi is in the right.
God,
okay?
Don't get me started.
Sorry. Again, I love all these series, but everybody trips up once in a while. How many female writers were in the writers' room?
1 or 0.
Right. That's true, Brandon. Janeway was a psycho half the time. So I'm not saying always wrote well for Janeway either. But
that's the problem
This
with
is why
Janeway.
representation matters, folks.
yeah,
The problem with Janeway is they were inconsistent with her. Her
Yeah.
character was. It's because of the different writers. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
And they wrote well for Seven at first.
Yes, at first.
And then when they decided that she's madly in love with Chakotay, I mean, by then it was way downhill at that point.
See, there's a reason why I don't watch the later episodes of Voyager.
That's a good reason too. Anyway, so so wrap up our discussion here. We hit the end of the episode, so I'll ask the particular question. I think I'll start with Darrin since I don't know his answer. Where would you have this rated on your own personal top 25? Would it be higher, lower, or around the same?
I'm gonna have to go with around the same.
Okay.
This is a good episode. I have a lot of personal love for Enterprise as a series. It's certainly one of my favorite starship designs of all of the Star Trek stuff. I really love the design of the NX-01. And this was a great arc where they went in again. Besides the stupid musical opening choices that everybody skips in the beginning anyway. This was a great end to a great season-long arc. I think there's a lot of payoffs to it. And as I said, the themes that it hits on, I think, are very important things. And I think as important today, right now, as they were back then in dealing with conflict and when somebody crosses a line and you can't forgive them, but really the only future is that forgiveness and moving forward, that learning to recognize humanity and each other and find a way to peacefully move forward and put conflict behind it. I think is as important right now as with any time. And I think this illustrates that really well. I think the pacing is excellently done. I think the characterizations are really nice. The performances are all really good. For wrapping things up, this kind of gives you everything that you want in an episode. And I think it knocked it out of the park.
So you don't begrudge me putting it in my top 10?
No, not at all. As I said, I think that it's in my list, it would probably be somewhere around here as well. This one up, one down. We'll see how the rest of the top 10 starts to go. There's definitely no more episodes that I know are going to be in both your and would be in my top 10, which I'm excited about. But yeah, I think this is a really good place for this episode. Alyssa?
So as I said, this was my highest ranked Enterprise episode in my top 100. However, it was number 21. And I explained this when I did my top 100. The reason why no Enterprise episode gets beyond number 21 for me is not because it sucked or not because season 3 wasn't one of the greatest seasons of Star Trek, because it was. It's just because I didn't have the nostalgia that I have for all of the Deep Space Nine, TOS, TNG, and even certain Voyager episodes. I never got as into Voyager as a whole as I did to the other shows, but there were particular episodes that I had a really lot of nostalgia and emotional attachment to. And Enterprise, I watched it after the fact. I didn't watch it for many years, and then watched it again. So I just don't have that emotional attachment that I have to some of the other shows. So that is the only reason why it does not make it beyond number 21, because that's part of it for me. It's not just quality, it's also like my emotional attachment to them. So that is why Enterprise does not make it beyond number 21, but still in my top 25. And this was my highest ranked Enterprise episode. And when I did do an Enterprise top 10, this was number 1.
You're number 1. You're okay. Yeah.
Hey, lower deck. No, decks. Okay.
Yeah. By the way, I did watch that video as well. I had all the Star Trek actors saying "Save Lower Decks."
To be perfectly honest with you, I like that they did that, but I got bored with it after a while. I was like, okay, yes, save Lower Decks.
Yeah, me too.
I stopped watching them. I think what's his face? Frakes started like yelling, "Lower Decks!" I was like, okay, we'll get the point. I'm glad that they're doing it, but I don't particularly need to watch it all. but I appreciate that they did that.
So yes, so that is it for this particular top 10, or we're in the top 10. That was my top 25. Started with my top 25, now to my top 10. So we'll be back again next month for my number 9. But in the meantime, no short for live streams. Going to be doing one every Monday starting next Monday for House of the Dragon. Just finished watching season 1 last night. Really, really pumped for season 2. So yeah, we'll be back, the three of us, every Monday night, same time, talk about House of the Dragon. Also, I believe Darrin and I will be back next, not this coming Wednesday, but the following Wednesday, to talk about The Expanse season 1, because I just recently rewatched that. And so I was like, well, I have some thoughts. It's been a while since I talked about it. So we're going to talk about The Expanse. Any excuse to talk about that show that I love. I named my cats after. Anyway, if you guys just want to give a shout out to where people can find you, what you're up to, Alyssa, we'll start with you.
So you can find me over on Alyssa Jean's Reviews. I have reduced my content that I'm producing in 2024. However, I do have a pretty big June. I just dropped a video on Star Trek Discovery called 5 Ways That I Would Rewrite Star Trek Discovery in retrospect. Not trying to be arrogant that I'm better than the writers or anything, but now that we've seen all 5 seasons, like things that I think they could have done differently in retrospect that I would have loved. So that's what that video is about. And speaking of House of the Dragon, very shortly here I will be dropping my House of the Dragon season 2 predictions. This goes back to an old tradition where Mark and I used to do Game of Thrones predictions 10 years ago now. 10 years is when I not quite 10 years to the date, but in 2014 I dropped my first Game of Thrones prediction video. And it's not the same with House of Dragon. there's less book material, there's less characters, there's a whole, like I used to do like a whole video about my King's Landing predictions and my whole video about my Winterfell predictions. You just divide it up, and with House of the Dragon, I've got 10 total predictions about the whole season. So it's not quite the same, but I don't know. I'm feeling a little nostalgic about my old prediction videos, and just thought it would be a fun thing to do. I did it also for season. I think halfway through season 1, I did a prediction video. Doing it again. So I'm working on that now. I'm just going to post it when I finish it. So within the next day or two, look for that video. And then I shall be back here on Monday nights, obviously, talking about House of the Dragon. And then Brandon, my other friends out there, Matty Jester, if you watch, make sure to join me on June 21st for my personal live chat. Doing another one of those, live chat with wine. I'll make an official announcement on my own channel shortly so that you don't forget about that. But yeah, pretty busy month for me, even though I haven't really been doing a whole lot with my channel this year. Doing a lot in this month.
Cool. And Darrin? Yeah, my future is permanent guest host over here with Mark on his channel. Occasional guest host. Yeah, not doing a whole lot over on D's Reviews. I've got a bunch of old videos for a bunch of Marvel shows and Star Wars bits and a few other things. I've had a lot of personal changes that's taken up a lot of my time. So I was potentially weighing doing some discussions on the Acolyte, but that didn't really impact me to the point of that I wanted to talk about it every week. So we'll see how it goes, and maybe something I'll talk about it towards the end. This show's fine. It's not interesting to me. But other than that, no, just looking forward to talking House and the Dragon and really enjoying jumping back into The Expanse. Man, that show is so good. So good. I just want to talk about good shows. That's why I'm here with Mark and Alyssa. More crap. Damn it.
Well, you mean you don't want to do a Boba Fett revisited? Let's go back and talk about Boba Fett again.
Yeah.
No, better. Yeah, let's talk about Picard season 2 again.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a Picard season 2 Boba Fett double feature. Actually, I was considering doing a review double feature of Rebel Moon Part 2 and Madam Web because they both dropped on Netflix about the same time.
Oh my
But I've
God.
only gotten about 10 minutes into Madam Web, and I've been that's in 3 chunks. So I don't know when that's ever going to
I
happen.
told less than halfway through Rebel Moon Part 1, and then I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
As soon as they brought in the Borg Queen spider, like I was out.
Oh, well, see, I mean, that's one of the reasons I did. I'm just kind of like, but do I want to get on and just rant at how bad these things are? I mean, I have to make it educational. Why are they bad?
Yeah.
What are the particular choices?
I'm a hate watcher. I just can't hate watch. If something sucks, I just stop watching it. I just can't. Respect to all you hate watchers out there. I can't do it. I cannot hate watch.
No.
I hate watch some episodes of Star Trek, like the Subversa. But
no, if there's 90 minutes I'd rather spend somewhere else, even if that's like staring at my belly button. Like those.
Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah. So thanks to Alyssa, Darren. Thank you so much for joining for yet another great discussion on the top 25. And thanks for everyone in the chat. Brandon Wilfer, number 1. Rob stopped by briefly. Jordan Johnson. No, I don't believe Jay came in 99 stopped by this time. But anyway, thanks for everyone for joining. Thanks for everyone watching the archives. And we will see you next time, I suppose.